In this video, we'd like to give you a peek behind the scenes of the making of Terror Chasm. One of the goals of this game is to give you massive replayability with as many different levels to play through as you could want. But being a small team, we knew that we couldn't make each level by hand and still give you the amount of gameplay that you deserve. So we created a custom AI level generation system for you. This is designed to give you unlimited levels that you can choose to play through and enjoy. We spent nearly 2 years designing this system and figuring out how it would work. We wrote up extensive design documents talking about how the game would handle things like puzzles, traps, platforming obstacles, and all the other items that you're likely to encounter in the game. The next thing we had to do was test this idea, but rather than jumping right in with extensive programming, we decided to test the concept on paper, literally. We created a D&D style turn-based mock-up and used something similar to what we were planning for the computer to use to design the levels, only in this case, instead of a computer algorithm, we just used some multi-sided die and corresponding charts to determine how we would create this level in this 2D hand-drawn test. We then used little rubber animals as avatars to play through the levels and see how well this idea would actually work. This first test went pretty well and we learned some valuable things from it. The next step was to create an actual playable game prototype. So we used the same process to create a level that way and mocked it up in the engine as a simple level that we could play through just to see how this would work. This gave us a great sense of what the gameplay would actually be like and allowed us to correct and refine things even more. And here you can see that first test level in action, and we're using the standard Unreal Mannequin model as the player. But the most significant task was yet to come. This was of course creating the actual code and systems that would allow the AI level generation to function. It took many months, but we eventually had a system that could intelligently create playable levels for the player to navigate. The very idea that we could instantly generate hundreds or even thousands of different original levels with just the click of a button was extremely exciting. Because we want to provide these levels to the player automatically, the AI has to be able to generate these levels entirely on its own with absolutely no direct oversight from us, the developers. The AI has to be able to generate millions of these types of levels, and each of these has to be unique, playable, and winnable. This was quite the task, but once we had the system up and going, we were extremely proud of it. And so with just the push of a button, we can create multiple levels instantly. In fact, I think we're creating 15 right here. The Python console has come up, and Python is what we're using, and it's spitting out these levels. And then you can see on the right-hand side of the screen over there, the level files are being produced. We're leaning very heavily on Unreal's Python integration in order to create these levels. The type of data that's output by the generator is JSON data, or data that's in a JSON format. And what you're seeing right now is a debug map. Basically, it's a 2D representation of what the 3D map will be once it's generated, and this map is generated simultaneously along with the 3D information. We realized very quickly that since we're probably going to be creating literally millions of different levels, that we need a quick way to test and see if a level's working or if it's generating properly and if everything's all copacetic and kosher there. So we needed a way to do this without having to load in the entire 3D level to check it, and so we came up with this. The debug maps are created in Python using the data that's output by the level generator. This data also includes both the same data that's imported into Unreal and metadata that's just used by the map. The map itself is an SVG image that's embedded inside of an HTML file, which also uses JavaScript and CSS for its functionality. As you can see, the debug map gives us a really good idea of what the generator decided to do when it created this level or any individual level that we decide to check on. And now we can load in the actual 3D version, the real playable version of that level in the engine right here. Each level is actually encased in a larger shell like you see, but we're going to go inside and do a little fly through to just check out the level that we were just looking at in that 2D map of the 3D playable versions, starting with the starter area. This one just happens to be a fairly short level, but some of them can be a little bit longer than this. The generator actually has a setting so that we can control how long or short the levels are. We give them a kind of a range between, usually it's set right now between 1 chasm and 3 chasms. Those kind of pit platforming areas kind of dictate how long the level is, but we could add many more if we really wanted to. For the final release of Terror Chasm, once the game is done, you'll have unlimited different types of levels of all different sizes and difficulties. We'll deliver these through our servers, as well as facilitating online multiplayer functionality. And for the pre-alpha demo, we're giving you access to 100 different generated levels for you to download and enjoy. One of the most significant elements of this game is the environment itself. In fact, you could argue that the temple is almost a character in its own right. We wanted to make this the ultimate PvE game, player versus environment, and this entire environment is your enemy. Because we wanted the temple to be distinctive when compared to other game environments, meaning standard temples, we decided not to use a completely realistic environment, and instead we based the aesthetics of the interior walls on Frank Lloyd Wright's Mayan Revival style architecture. Our first version of the concept art for what the temple might look like was originally gray, but after getting some feedback we realized that it would look better if we gave it a more tan-brown color palette instead. It's definitely more realistic this way, and everyone seems to think that it looks better like this. We also mocked up some 3D concepts to get a better feel for what the atmosphere of the temple of the actual game would be like as you're moving through it. Also, originally we were going to have a more standard lighting scheme with dark or black shadowy areas, but we wanted something more visually distinctive for the game, and so we took a hint from comic books and made the shadowy areas blue instead. Here's the original concept for that. This also makes it a little easier to see in the dark spots in the game, and thus helps to improve the gameplay as a puzzle platformer. And we treat those areas as if they are able to create an otherworldly glow-in-the-dark kind of effect on the player characters. It's as though they're under a black light. This makes the game even more visually unique and just plain cooler to look at. Another thing that has gone through multiple iterations is the design for the 4 main characters. Originally, we were going to have them more closely resemble generic explorer kinds of characters, but we quickly realized that this would be kind of boring. Here are some of the previous 3D designs that we experimented with but won't be in the game. We also wanted to distinguish them from the Nathan Drakes and Lara Crofts of the world, and because of a change to the plot, instead of being characters who are going to a jungle to deliberately explore this temple, they are now being unexpectedly teleported there from an urban or suburban environment. This allowed us to give them a more trendy, kind of high-fashion wardrobe, which should be more interesting to look at as you're playing. Although the final release version of the game will be a 1 to 4 person co-op online multiplayer game, we currently only have one playable character for the free alpha demo that we're releasing. This is Lily. We went through several versions of her. Here's an earlier 3D mock-up, and these are the current models of her. She's the character you can play for now in this single-player demo, and she'll be joined by the rest of her crew when the completed version of the game is released. And now for everyone's favorite character in the game, the giant antagonistic plant monster. The idea is that this thing is an omnipresent threat that can move through the walls and come at you from any direction. It's the very essence of PvE, or player versus environment, and it's designed to be a unique video game enemy that creates a lot of suspense in the game. Here's the first sketch we did showing the plant's vines moving through the walls. You can see the vines coming through the cracks in the walls as the plant grows, chasing you through the level and tries to lash out at you. And here's some concept art of the killer munchweed that it can use as a finishing move. We had to create custom enemy AI for this plant monster so that it can move through the walls to attack you. Unfortunately, the standard Unreal AI or raycast system was not sufficient for what we needed, as it only works in a 2D space and we needed the plants to be able to navigate through this 3D space. This is why we had to program our own custom AI for the plant so that it could go up and down the walls and over ceilings and in any direction. Here's a simple test room that we did for the enemy AI to see how it would navigate the 3D space. And here's the same room with the cracks coming out of the surfaces, which is how you know the plant is coming after you. As development continues, we'll introduce more complex AI behaviors and different attacks for the plant. It's going to have more and more ways to mess with you. With as much work that has gone into the making of Terror Chasm, we still have a lot more to do before the game can be officially released. This includes creating the other characters and doing everything else necessary to set up the multiplayer gameplay. We are also going to be advancing the level generation system even more so that you will have more complex levels and more different types to play through. And we're going to be giving the enemy plant AI more sophisticated behaviors and things to do in the game. And there will be also lots and lots more puzzles, traps, and platforming challenges for you to enjoy. With your support, we will continue working to make Terror Chasm a unique and exciting gameplay experience. Thank you very much for watching.